Thank you very much. Is this microphone working, the technical person? We're all good? Yep, perfect, excellent. Well, Brian, thank you very much for asking me to come along. Basically, about a month ago, Rotary asked me to come along and do a bit of a chat for them, and so I sat and had a bit of a think about all I've learned over 25 years of working as a doctor and what sort of message that I might want to carry regarding health. A lot of health advice comes from a place of paucity, meaning that you're told don't do this, don't do that, take this medicine, get this surgery, whereas really the power to being healthy is within each of you. There are certain behaviours that you can engage with on a daily basis that ultimately will put you in a place of both good mental and physical health, which will have two effects. One, you yourself as the individual will feel better, and secondly, there'll be a lot of help in the community with burden of disease. Over 25 years of medicine, I've had the privilege of being able to work in a variety of fields with people who are much more intelligent and accomplished than I am. And having been someone who's always struggled with both his mood and his weight, I've always sort of cherry-picked ideas from other doctors and health professionals to try and work out ways how to solve those problems for myself. And everything I'm going to share with you today are things that I do myself, and after the talk, if anyone is interested in speaking further about it, Brian has my mobile phone number. I'm more than happy to talk to people on the phone, meet up for a coffee or a beer or whatever. So please feel free to reach out if you're interested. The first thing I'll talk about is suicide. We know that suicide in regional Australia is a big problem, particularly amongst the youth. There's a bit of a misnomer around suicide where people think that ultimately it stems from mental health problems, where often the person who decides to perform suicide may have no history of mental health problems. But there is one thing that all people who make that decision share, and that is a feeling of hopelessness. Women attempt suicide more often than men, but men die more frequently of suicide. There are a couple of reasons put forward for that. One is lethality of means. So men tend to do physical things, use firearms, jump off buildings, hang themselves, whereas women tend to use more pharmacological means. Another big reason for that disparity, I think, is probably isolation. We know that isolation in and of itself is a risk factor for early mortality. It's separate to all other causes of mortality. It in and of itself can predict early death for someone. Men in particular don't like being vulnerable. They probably share less than what women do, and I think particularly if they're in a hole, will find themselves trying to deal with things by themselves rather than sharing with the people that they care about or who they should speak to about what's going on in their lives. In the tail end of my marriage, I found myself in a place where I was under huge financial pressure, and I was a stranger in a house that I'd helped build both financially and emotionally. I never worked full time as a doctor. I wanted to be around for my children, and I really had poured myself into my family, and yet I found myself in this position where everywhere I turned around I seemed to be in conflict with someone. And it was a horrible place for me, and it seemed the harder I tried, the more I bumped into people, the more conflict there was. And in the midst of this stress, this idea popped into my head that, well, the solution to this problem would be to kill myself and make it look like an accident. And that would solve two problems. One would be that I would no longer be here, and this, the cause of a lot of this conflict in the family would be gone. And secondly, my life insurance would pay out and all of the financial hardship we're under would be gone. So over the ensuing months, that idea I used to pull out when things were difficult for me, and I'd sort of polish it a bit and I'd look at it and think, well, if things get too hard for me, this is something I'll be able to do, and eventually I was on the phone to a friend and I spoke to him about it, and by the end of that conversation I felt like a cold bucket of water had been thrown on me, and as I hung up the phone I was standing there and beside me was this black evil thing that I thought was a part of me but wasn't, and I was enormously frightened about where I had gotten to. And so from that moment to this, I've really been on a journey to make sure, looking at the stresses of my life, looking at putting positive behaviours into my life so that I never get to a place like that again. The idea of being isolated and not talking about your problems is something that you need to force yourself to get out of, you know. I mean, I think that on a regular basis, people need to learn to be vulnerable, you know. We live in this world where we're all engaged with our phones and social media, and we've just lost the art of socialisation, and ultimately we are social animals. I would challenge anyone in this room to, you know, next time you sit on a plane next to a stranger, make the effort to have a conversation, you know. If you're someone who's got some stuff going on for you, get into the habit of sharing that with people who are close to you. Don't wait to talk to your doctor or your therapist about it, because at the end of the day, when you're in a hole, they're the last person you're going to speak to. You need to develop this as a positive habit, and it can be very uncomfortable to do. But it saved my life, and it might ultimately save yours. Now, on the topic of isolation, that sort of leads me to talk about these things, all right? Now, guys, let's be clear. You don't use these things, they use you, okay? I think that the smartphones and all that they represent has been an absolute scourge on humanity. I sort of see them as a form of psychological cancer. One of the greatest commodities I think we have as humans is time, you know, and these things rob us of time. You know, as I was introduced, I grew up in Collinsville in the early 80s. If you had an answering machine in those days, you were fancy. The television had 2 channels. If I wanted to switch channels, I had to get off my beanbag and physically click something. One of those channels was the ABC, you know, and there was just 1 hour of kids' shows late in the afternoon. And so that meant 2 things for me as a child. Firstly, there was a lot of movement in my life. And secondly, there was acres and acres of blissful boredom. Just huge amounts of time where I had nothing to do, which meant 2 things. One, I had to generate my own fun, which I think was really important. But also, just as importantly, my brain had a lot of downtime. A lot of time where the neurological activity going into my brain just was able to just sort of calm itself down and sit, where I would just look at clouds or hang out with trees or just be by myself, you know. And that is something which I think has been lost in the modern world. You know, we are overstimulated. You know, we go from, checking our emails at work to checking our emails at home. We go, you know, we sit there and we're scrolling through social media. We're thinking about, we're at an event and we're thinking about, oh, should I post or shouldn't I post? Or you go and visit a place and all that you're thinking about is, oh, so-and-so was here and wasn't that great? And, oh, maybe I should take a photo, but, you know, and then you do it and then no one comments on it. And, you know, it's just, we're in this constant low-level anxiety state where we're engaging with 55,000 of our closest friends via platforms that really are just designed to sell us stuff, you know, and consequently we're overstimulated, which means that really the only time that we get to have mental downtime often is sleep. Unfortunately, because we're overstimulated, we can't sleep, you know, it interferes with our ability to get there. Furthermore, as we're looking at our posts and whatever, it actually physically eats into the time that we should be spending sleeping. So if I've got any advice to you guys, and looking around, I don't know if there's a lot of people here that would be, on the TikTok or social media or posting on Insta or whatever, but, you know, if you're going to socialise, just turn your phone off. You know, if you're with the people that you love and you care about, don't just put your phone on silent, just turn it off. Leave it at home, put it in the car. You know, if you're going to have a meal with people you care about, just get your phone out of your life. Delete all your apps. You know, there's no need for us, if you think about it on balance. I mean, look, I understand certain people need certain apps to get information with regards to sporting clubs and the like, but use it just for that. You know, otherwise just delete the things. I mean, I'm on WhatsApp. I've just recently had to get back on a certain social media platform just because I've joined a football club because my son's now playing seniors and I said I'd play with him. So I need to be on that to get information for the club. But really, I've got a couple of groups on WhatsApp of people that I love, and if I want to take a photo or something, I'll take a photo and send it to them because they're people that I actually care about, you know. So just get into the habit of being social, turn these things off, find some downtime for yourself. If you can't get away from your phone or you're just too much in love with it, there's a very simple activity that you can do on a daily basis that will help, and that is meditate for 20 minutes a day. Now, it's not complicated. There's plenty of advice and apps and all sorts of stuff around meditation. Personally, all that I do is I set an alarm on my phone for 20 minutes, and then I either sit or I lie down and I just breathe deeply and slowly for 20 minutes. And I just try and focus on my breath and not think. It's very, very difficult to do. What you'll find though is if you engage with that discipline, what will happen is that at a certain period of time, you'll get a minute or two there where all you're thinking about is just that breath. And once you've opened that window for yourself in a short period of time, you'll sit down and then the alarm will go off and you'll have had the most blissful 20 minutes of your life. What you'll then find is that as you go out in life and you experience stressful situations, you'll immediately be able to return to your breath. You don't need music or someone talking you through it. You can just start breathing deeply and slowly and pull your mind back into here, and all of a sudden that stress is gone. Okay, you'll find yourself sleeping better, you'll find yourself thinking better, you'll be able to perform your daily tasks with more clarity and focus than you would otherwise. So with regards to your phones, if you want to inform yourself a bit about what's going on there's a terrific documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. If you haven't seen it, I'd suggest that you have a look at it, particularly if you've got children and grandchildren. And if there was one sort of self-help book that I would recommend, there's an author called Ryan Holiday who's a Stoic. Stoicism is a form of philosophy that came from Marcus Aurelius. When I discovered it a few years ago, I found that I've probably been a Stoic for most of my life, and it's about the power of the mind. There's a book called Ego is the Enemy. It's an easy read. I'd suggest you have a look at that. It's, of all the stuff out there, I think it's quite practical and you can put it into your life easily. All right, so enough about mental health stuff. We're going to get on to some physical health. Basically, there are 5 things I want to talk to you about. Firstly, don't die young, be skinny, be strong, be fit, and look after your gut. Okay, so with regards to not dying young, get your skin checked once a year. Just, go to your GP, not as a like, I'm in for a script, I'm in blah, blah, would you mind looking at these things? No, make an appointment. Specifically, we have to strip down your underwear and just get it looked at from top to toe. If you don't want to do that with your GP, there's heaps of skin clinics that you can go and do it at. Melanoma doesn't occur in sun-exposed areas, it occurs in nooks and crannies. And doing that as an annual exercise is not really that big a deal, but it might save your life. One thing you definitely do not want is metastatic melanoma. While the treatments nowadays are much better, you want to avoid it. For the blokes out there, I don't have to talk to the women about this, but for the blokes out there, in the morning, find a sunscreen that's, and just put it on. Put on something on your face, put something on your arms, get into the habit of doing that. Just the moisturising process of that will help you with your skin. It'll avoid a lot of those things being cut out later in life. At night, before you go to bed, after you have your shower, moisturise. It's very simple. Your skin will respond beautifully to it. You'll find that you'll less often have to go and have needles stuck in you and have knives, cutting bits of bark off you. Women, engage with cervical screening and remember that at age 40 you can access Breast Screen, which is a free breast cancer screening program. For everybody, when you turn 40, make sure that you turn up to your GP and get a set of fasting bloods done, get your blood pressure checked, get someone to listen to your heart, and then be guided by your GP about where to go from there. If you are 40 or older and any of you get any form of chest discomfort, even if it's weird, you need to go and get your heart looked at, okay? There's been plenty of people dropping dead from indigestion on golf courses, okay? And, I do most of my money is earned through cardiac stress testing work. I've done probably 15,000 of the things over the last 12 or 13 years. And one of the great things about heart disease is that it's very fixable, okay? Your heart is a muscle. It requires blood supply, okay? And the blockages that occur in the blood vessels around your heart don't present themselves often until it's late, and it's a much easier thing to have that identified before you've had a heart attack rather than after, okay? Because after you've had a heart attack, part of your muscle has died and it certainly doesn't grow back, okay? So if you have chest discomfort and you're over 40, get seen to. When you turn 50, get a colonoscopy. Now, I'm looking at the age, so I turned 50 last year. We all get our little, check your poo for blood in the mail, which is, your little ticket of, yep, I'm officially old. However, I had the privilege of working with a surgeon who was involved in the pilot program where they were researching this, and he commented how surprised he was at the number of interim cancers that they found in people who had negative fecal occult bloods. And so he suggested to me that when I turn 50, I just get a colonoscopy. Okay, so do that. If you've got a family history of bowel cancer, so mum, dad, brothers or sisters, and whatever age they got cancer at, you need a colonoscopy 10 years prior to that date. Okay, so that's fairly clear. When you turn 50, make sure that your GP listens to your heart. Okay. You can go in, get your blood pressure checked, etc., but they really need to listen to your heart. Valve disease, which can lead on to heart failure and various other things, can only really be picked up on by someone listening with a stethoscope. Okay, so make sure that happens when you turn 50. Get a CT coronary angiogram done. This is a relatively new test. Basically, it's just taking a picture of your heart, looking at the blood vessels around your heart, making a snapshot of whether you've got anything blocking up those blood vessels. It'll cost you a few dollars. You can get referred to a cardiologist, which will make it cheaper for you, but it's a worthwhile investment because it gives you just a picture of where you're at that point in time. The other thing I would invest in when you turn 50 is a smartwatch. So there's a disease called atrial fibrillation, which is where your heart beats in a funny way. What happens if you go into atrial fibrillation, and most people don't know whether they're in it or out of it, and very often people will go in and out of it for years, is that when you are in it, your heart does not pump effectively, and consequently you can get a clot in your heart, and that can go to your brain and you can have a stroke. Back in the day, very often that's how people would present. They would come in, have a stroke, and we're thinking, oh wow, and then we would check their heart and we would find that they're in atrial fibrillation. Since the advent of these smartwatches, we've been picking up on a lot of atrial fibrillation before it becomes a problem. So when you turn 50, that's a reasonable investment, okay? So guys, don't die young, all right? Engage with your GPs, get your skin checked, and you can live a good life, all right? Be skinny. Now, it's a truism that every diet works, but every diet fails, okay? Committing psychological warfare with yourself on a daily basis is a nightmare, okay? And most people that engage with diets 3 to 5 years later are fatter than they were when they started. And look, I've been one of those people, trust me. The one diet that I've discovered to be very effective and that I've championed and I've got lots of patients onto is the intermittent fasting diet, which was brought into, I guess, the spotlight by the late, great Michael Mosley. He wrote a book on it called The Fast Diet. Very simply, it requires you to do something twice a week. So on 2 days of the week, you just need to have a certain number of calories. You can look this stuff up on Google. It used to be, you can get the book, I suppose. I never read the book. I just learned the principle and then I just did it. So on your fasting days, if you're a bloke, you have 600 calories. If you're a woman, you have only 800 calories. On your other 5 days, you can do whatever the hell you want, all right? And I stress this to patients. That's what I did, I mean, when I started the diet, I couldn't sleep, I was so hungry. Oh my goodness, I just lay in bed just thinking, oh my God, I'm going to die if I don't eat. But then I thought, tomorrow I'm going to have breakfast, I'm going to have a pie, I'm going to have a sausage roll, I'm going to have a crumb sausage, And believe me, that's what I did, okay? I'm not kidding you, that's what I did. And it was very important because it meant that in my mind, I just needed to execute that day. And then the next day, if I wanted to, I would eat anything. I'd eat for Australia. The research shows that, and there's lots of research out there, it shows that you will actually overall eat less. You've removed the psychological burden of trying to be a good person 7 days a week because you just got to do it 2 days a week. And then finally, you'll continue to lose weight. And what you will find after 3 or 4 weeks, your desire to smash food on your non-fasting days will just disappear. It'll just go away. And it's not because you're trying to be good. It's just because you've acclimatised to being hungry. because most of us don't like being hungry. If you think about it, where you're hungry in this world of plenty and you think, if I don't eat soon, I'm going to die. Well, on a fasting day, you're going to think that, and 45 minutes later, that feeling of hunger will be gone. And you'll go, oh, I'm not dead, you know. And once you've done that a few times, it becomes easier. So learning to be hungry is an important part of this, but it's simple. No foods are cut out. You don't know, it's just execute something 2 days a week. A variation of that diet, which is what I now use, is called the 16-8, where basically you have all of your calories within 8 hours. I just find that easier to do with my life, so I just don't eat till late in the day, and I just make sure all my consumption is done within an 8-hour period. So anyway, it's very simple. You can research all you want about it, but I think it fulfills the simplicity requirement. Be fit. 3 to 5 hours of walking a week. We know that that has huge benefits both for your physical fitness, for your mental health. It'll improve your sleep. You walked in here, you're going to walk out of here. If you walk past your car for 10 minutes and come back to it, you've done 20 minutes of walking. That all counts. If you do between 3 to 5 hours a week, that'll improve your cardiovascular health and your mental health. Once you establish a routine of walking, you can even add in a little bit of this, you know, for like 20 metres or so, and then just walk again, and then a bit of this. And what you'll find is that over time, because you've established a walking routine, you'll then find that you'll be able to do this for maybe 20 minutes, and then half an hour, and then an hour. Once again, it's not difficult. You don't have to push yourself. Walking is a very functional thing. It's not like you have to go and smash yourself to do it, okay? But 3 to 5 hours a week is of huge benefit, okay? And easy to put into your life. Be strong, okay? Now, the thing that kills people that people don't realise is loss of muscle mass. Ultimately, as you get older, you know, people focus on walking and, you know, watching what they eat and drink and whatever, seeing their doctor. But at the end of the day, I assisted an orthopaedic surgeon for 10 years. I have spent thousands of hours in theatre with all sorts of traumas where people have fallen over, you know, broken things, and particularly with the elderly, it's often because they've just lost muscle mass. They can't lift a suitcase in and out of a car. They can't lift the washing up. They can't get up and down stairs. And once that begins to happen, you lose your confidence. Then you start to fall. And next thing you know, you're in a world of hurt. You can build muscle up to 80% of you could when you were 20, all the way up to death. Okay, lifting weights and building muscle does not mean you have to strain, okay? You can build muscle through repetition. You should never have a grimace face. You know, really, I have a program that I do twice a week. I'm more than happy. If you want my phone number, I can meet you at a gym and I can show you what I do. Personal trainers and everyone that says you've got to work hard, you do not, okay? You can build muscle through progressive overload. You start with very light weights, and at no point should you work up a sweat or anything like that. You will build muscle over time, okay? And that will put you in a better place for longevity, okay? So please lift weights at least twice a week. And once again, I'm happy to give you more specific advice on that if you need. Finally, look after your gut. So there's a lot of emerging research about the microbiome and all the good bacteria in your gut. We're learning that that all these bacteria produce enzymes and hormones that improve both your mental and physical health. The key to it is eat 30 plants a week, and that's it. I mean, there's a fellow called Professor Spector who's got a website called zoe.com. I would suggest that you can go and visit it and have a look. You sort of think 30 plants a week, that's a lot. It isn't really, because it includes herbs and nuts and seeds and all sorts. I mean, you can. At Coles, I've got the protein mix stuff that's got about 6 different things in it. I can have a handful of that, and I've had 6 vegetables. A packet salad that's got 5 or 6 different things in it, with a can of 4-bean mix, and in the space of a snack and a meal, I've had about 13 or 14 different vegetables. So you can sit down and write down a list and tick it off. But if you want to have a happy gut, that's the key, 30 plants a week, okay? And once again, it doesn't have to be complicated. So guys, again, the key to health is from a place of abundance, not from a place of paucity. The ability to be mentally and physically healthy is within each of you. You don't have to blow your backside out to have a good and healthy life. And if any of you, as I said, want to talk further about this, Brian's got my number and I'll be happy to circle back to it. But thank you very much for your time.